Cordy, and as I was driving past I sort of noticed that you were throwing rocks off of the bridge at oncoming traffic, and I think at best that's reckless behaviour, to be honest with you. Obviously. Today's Monday, and that means we talk about some sort of lick that is probably worth practicing, whether that be from a musical standpoint or technique standpoint. And I wanted to draw your attention to a guy that you've obviously heard of, Tom Quayle. On his Instagram he posted a lick that goes something like this, and I'll try and play it. This is the second attempt, but I've just got out of the shower. And what he was saying in that post, so if you don't already follow Tom on Instagram, it's probably worth doing so, because he posts these kind of useful things all the time, as well as being a great guitarist, and that goes without saying. You already know that, probably. If you've heard of me, you've definitely heard of Tom Quayle many more times. So that particular lick I was looking at and I thought, yeah, that is useful. I think he plays it in a slightly different way to me in terms of technique, but I think the real focus of this thing is that what's going on in the left hand. So in this video what I wanted to do was look quickly at that lick, but then also look at the other things that I would do with that lick to kind of solidify whatever lessons there were within that lick. So I guess there's kind of, the thing about learning licks is that each kind of lick, I'm going to try and stop saying lick because this is getting weird, has its own kind of identity, and I guess the focus for me in this video is how you can use that identity to create other things, or, you know, stretch that lick out and get more ideas out of one thing. So this is just a few ways that I've looked at this lick and other things that I've done with it. So the tabs for all of this will be on my Patreon if you want them, but hopefully I'll play them slow enough that you can work out what's going on from this video, or use the slowdown. Also, Tom has hid the tab for his initial idea on his Instagram, so that's definitely worth checking out. So we're in G major. And we've got this big stretchy stuff going on, and also so 3 notes on this top string, then 1, then 1 on the string above. That's kind of the pattern. And then moving that kind of sequence and shape down through the scale. As you're going to learn this lick, I guess you're going to try and work it out from the tab probably. As you're doing that, I would encourage you to try and sing the lick as you play it. This helps you to get it off of the page and into your consciousness, hopefully. One thing I've found when I'm playing licks that I've learnt from writing is that they don't really stick that well in your head if you keep looking at the sheet. So try singing it as you play it. And it's going to sound silly probably, so try not to do it in public. I just did it here for 3 people to watch. But that's stage 1 of the lick. So when it comes to these stretches, your left hand technique is something to watch out for. You're going to probably want this thumb in the middle of the neck, or, you know, definitely not thumb over. And for the long shifts you might want to consider sort of a hand pivot. So for that one, instead of doing a stretch where I've got this left hand pointer finger already in place, I'm sort of pivoting. And I guess that's kind of one of the things that this lick brings out is this ability to kind of negotiate these wide intervals in a way that hopefully with enough practice kind of sounds smooth. In terms of actually what there is to look at with the lick, it's not necessarily crazy complex or anything. It's you know, repetitive, which is good, and a repeating pattern, which is also the same thing as saying it's repetitive. This little fingering part here is something to watch out for. So instead of doing a bar, you might want to consider bringing your middle finger underneath your so that's what I focused on with the lick, was making it so that every time you hit that note just before you descend down to the next string, I'm focusing on making that land on a middle finger so that I don't trip up under the rest of the notes. So every top note I think is starting with the pinky, which this lick is also good for, and then every note every bottom note is going to be this, the pointer finger. So we go from pinky, pointer, those are the important bits. So pinky important, pointer important, then you can probably do this middle part however you like, and then middle finger again for that last note on that string. So that's kind of the first thing you might do with that lick, is learn it. Maybe you try and learn it off of the paper, and maybe you might try and play it in context. So that was basically what I did yesterday, and I put it up on my Instagram for whatever reason. But I was playing My Foolish Heart, and for this lick to work I kind of played it in E major and put it there. So that's kind of phase one of learning the lick, is to get it to a stage where you can sort of play it okay, like I can at the moment. It's not particularly fast, but I can play it without thinking too much about what's going on, and maybe you try and put it in context. So that's all good, but what might you do next? So the next most obvious thing, I guess, would be to try and put it in another key. You know, for instance, we could play in A major. It's already in G, so we just move everything up 2 frets. Now this sounds relatively easy, but depending on the complexity of the lick, can actually be way more difficult than it sounds. So you might want to write it down. I find it quite a good exercise not to write it down, but play it in another key. So playing up 2 frets from where you already were, G major to A major, is difficult. Playing it up 1 fret or 1 below is even more difficult, I find, because it basically puts the, you know, if you're visualizing it with the kind of fret markers, it throws that all out the window. So let's try this. We're going to be in A flat now, making our starting note F, I believe. So that might be your step 2, right? So you're moving it into other keys. Now with a lick like this, it's not necessarily going to be possible to move it to all places over the neck. So you might want to try going sort of 2 frets below where the lick starts, potentially, and 2 frets above, and see how you get on with that. Within that range, with most licks, you should be like kind of alright, as long as they're not crazy and going all over the neck. But I think that's probably a fairly good step too. So you might learn it in G, you might learn it in A, you might learn it in F, you might learn it in F sharp, you might learn it in A flat, and beyond that you might find it a bit difficult to actually perform those stretches. However, going up the neck, you can probably get a bit more mileage out of it. So then step 3, I think, is to move it diatonically through the scale. So if you don't know what that means, you could look it up quickly, but to be diatonic means that you're moving things within that key. So diatonically, G major, if you took like an arpeggio and you moved it diatonically, although the note relationships remain the same, so it's 1 3 5 2 4 6 3 5 7, etc. The intervals are changing to remain in G major. Take this, and we're ending on an A minor for that, aren't we? Or an A. We start on an E, we end on an A. So what if we started on a G? Let me try and do this without looking at the sheet. Nope, that's not right. So that was roughly what it should be, but not quite. That was definitely not right. That was about right. So we've basically shifted the lick diatonically up 3 notes, so E, F sharp, G, and we preserve the kind of identity of the lick by keeping the pattern the same. So but the notes and those interval relationships are different, so that they would work in this key still. So we could still play in G major and have this lick starting on a G and ending on a C, and it would work. So what else could we do? We could shift it diatonically up again, starting on an A and ending on a D. Okay, so that was not right. And it's kind of a challenge, both technique-wise and visualization-wise. As I say, you might want to write these down. They'll be provided in the tab view, but I think it's also quite a good exercise to just try and work them out first without reading them, just to kind of work on that. Whatever it is that we're actually doing here, you know, moving things through a key is not just a technique exercise, but it's also like a visualization thing. So we've got it in our normal position, which was starting on an E and ending on an A. We could then try it starting on a G and ending on a C, then starting on an A, ending on a D. You've also got this, if you only shifted it up 1 from the original, this would be quite difficult, I think. So this is a really challenging one, but I guess that means it's worth pursuing. Okay, yeah, I think that's right. then you could go underneath the lick. So what have we got? We've got one starting on an E, then we could start it on a D, and then I guess we'd be ending on a G, right? Brilliant. So this one's super difficult technically, and it's taken me quite a while to figure it out there. I don't know whether I'll leave in those fluff ups, but like that, for instance, it's very tricky. So shifting it diatonically, I've just done 4 examples there, I think, of how I would do it. Obviously, if you move it into other keys, other kind of possibilities are going to be available. Now, the last thing that I might try, and that I'll just try and do here, we've talked about the thing I'm working on at the moment, which is pairing melodic minor scales with the major scale that I like to use. And for instance, if we're in G major, I would use C melodic minor as my choice altered scale most of the time. So what can we do? We're starting on an E, etc. So what I want to try and do is transform that to work with the C melodic minor scale. So that would sound like this. So the actual melodic minor lick, I'm going to try and play it. This is probably going to go horribly wrong. Just grab my laptop to read it because it's quite difficult to figure out. So that one I found super tricky, to the point where it's, you know, kind of quite different technique wise to the initial lick, but it's got that same kind of sequential thing going on, and I'm gonna have to look at that closely and figure out how to play that fingering wise where I'm not stumbling. That's how I could take one small piece of information like that from a great guitarist like Tom Quayle, and you could transform that into probably, you know, like a week's worth of practice that would do wonders, I think, for your left hand, but also do wonders for kind of your visualization of this kind of thing in many different shapes and many different keys. So hopefully that's kind of vaguely interesting and vaguely helpful. Thank you to Tom for sharing that lick in the first place. I think it's a really cool one, and I guess a great way to practice those kind of shifts in left hand position-y stuff, as well as just generally being like a good thing to practice to kind of work on evenness of notes and timing. Obviously I've not got any of this down, but I was just showing you how I would practice this sort of thing and get a bit more out of just one small piece of information. I'm thinking that this is actually the way that I can learn more. You know, instead of learning 50 licks, take one small idea like this and really focus on transforming that and diatonically shifting it, and, you know, playing it in other keys, and then, you know, once I'm comfortable with that, then starting to make shifts into the melodic minor world. That's kind of a way that you can potentially get quite a lot out of one relatively small thing. That's just my idea on this anyway. So hopefully that's an interesting one to work on. As I say, I'll put the sheet and my workings for this up on Patreon if you want it. There's also a buy me a coffee link if you got something out of this video and you really wanted to, but only use that if you can afford to. Otherwise, liking and subscribing and sharing this channel around would help out a lot. I'm hoping that some people are getting some use out of this stuff. By the time you watch this video, I think my channel will have had 2 million views, which is kind of crazy. But thank you for the support, and thank you for checking in, and let me know if this sort of thing is useful or if it's not. Like I say, the tabs will be on Patreon. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll catch you for another video soon.